Welcome to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm Nichole Eaton, author of the books Rock Your Soul and Rock Your Comeback, as well as an intuitive therapist, and I'm here to remind you of your power. This podcast focuses on mindset and inviting the universe in to create a life that feels so good, so aligned, and so authentic. I hope you're ready. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Comeback podcast. This episode is so much fun. I sat down with Nick Carrier. He is the host of the Best You podcast, and he is a personal trainer. Super incredible conversation about goal setting and really actually staying consistent with your goals, accessing your why, and forming it in a way that works for you, not against you. But first, I want to talk to you about my book. Rock Your Comeback is coming out on August 22nd. It's officially available for pre-order, which is so exciting for me. That means we are so close. So you can pre-order on my website, NicholeEaton.com, and it will be shipped to you so that you can have it hopefully by the 22nd. And I'm praying you guys love it. I know you'll love it. I've worked so hard on it. It really is the down-to-earth guide to reclaiming your power. If you feel like you need to feel more powerful in your life, in your mind, in your heart, in your manifesting, in your connection with the universe, it has all of the things that we talk about on here on a regular basis, but in a very succinct, easy way so that you can be making sure you're fully stepping into your power. We go everywhere from the part in the dark where you might feel very stuck or lost in those black hole moments that we talk about a lot. We go into the area where we start to assess who's around you, including your self-abandonment and what you've normalized. And then we go into changing your mind. And I give you all the science behind why it's so vital to change your mind and be assessing who you believe yourself to be. And then we go into helping you connect with your own version of whatever the universe, God, angels is to you and how you personally connect with it, understanding energy, understanding how the universe plays a role in your healing and in your life. And then we end with manifesting, which is always my favorite topic, and self-love. So this is a true guide where I hold your hand, and I hope that you'll purchase it, and I hope you let me know what you think. It's something that has been a passion project of mine, and I'm so fucking excited to get it out to you. So now available for pre-order, and sending you guys all the good energy. I hope you love this episode. Let me and Nick know what you think. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm your host, Nichole Eaton, and today I'm here with master fitness expert and host of the Best You podcast, Nick Carrier. And I'm so excited. I got a chance to chat with Nick on his podcast maybe a couple of weeks ago, and we just had a great conversation. So I know this is going to be a super helpful conversation for all of you. So welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Nichole. Yeah, I was super pumped to have you on as well. And as I told you before we hopped on, I've been getting a lot of positive feedback from all the things that you shared on my show. And I have finally started to create my own meditation practice because of you. So I appreciate it. Yeah.
I love a follow through moment.
Of course. Now, I didn't follow through as immediately as I had said I would, or at least right after the podcast. But once I started putting it in my to-do list, I've got the theta waves on my liked videos on YouTube. And so I pulled that up and listened to it, and it's been great.
You know what, like most people don't follow through right away, even if they know it's something they're drawn to, or even if they know that it's something they'd like to do or would benefit them. It takes a minute to find some level of like consistency or like implementation. But I love that you did it.
Yeah, had to. It said I was going to. So
one of the things that I like to ask everybody on my podcast is, what does being in your power like mean to you?
Being in my power. I would say that honestly, it kind of comes down to what you were just asking me. Is like I had a follow through moment. I very much see myself as the type of person who follows through with the promises that I make to myself. And to me, if I can just be that person, if I can have that confidence in myself, then I feel like I have the power or the, control over a lot of different outcomes in my life. Because I think that all of us, no matter what area of our life that it is, whether it's our health, our personal life, our careers, our finances, our spiritual life, our relationships, I think all of us can identify maybe one or two things that we should be doing, but we're not actually doing. And so if we could have the habit, and if we could have the identity of somebody who follows through with the promises that we make to ourselves, all we have to do is promise ourselves to do something, and then we do it. And then if we do it, that thing, then it should improve that area of our life. And so for me, it's feeling like I am that person who can do that. And to me, all that comes down to is being a person of integrity, because honesty is when your words match reality, but integrity is when your reality matches your words. When you tell yourself you're going to do something and you actually do it. And so when I feel like I am being that person of integrity, I'm consistently being that person who follows through with the promises that I make to myself. I feel like probably that's what I mean when I am living in my power. I feel like I have the ability to be the person I want to be and achieve the things that I want to achieve.
I know there's people out there listening right now who are like, I want to follow through. I know I should do these things. I'm just struggling to find whatever it is that's going to make me do that. I'm curious if you have tips for people in that space who are just wanting to follow through, but maybe aren't.
Yeah, there's actually a list of 10 things that I write down every single day that are a list of essentially reasons why people do or don't follow through. I'm probably not going to go through all, I might go through all 10 very briefly and then kind of touch on a few a little bit more, but I kind of think there's two different categories of them. There's kind of external things that we can do, and then there's internal things that we kind of have to manage. And so some of the external things are preparation, making sure our goals or what we're telling ourselves to do is actually realistic. They're very specific. Then we create a level of urgency so that we feel like we have to do them, and we have some level of accountability. So let's go to the preparation thing. I think that so many of us don't follow through because we mismanage our calendar or we have a lack of preparation. So I'm a fitness trainer and I have a 10-week transformation. I was coaching a guy yesterday on a call, and he told me that, so it was yesterday afternoon, so 3:30 p.m. And I said, okay, what days are you getting your workouts in this week? He said, Monday, Thursday, Saturday. I'm like, okay, well, it's Monday at 3:30. Did you get it in today? He's like, well, no, I missed it at 10 a.m. And I was like, okay, well, why did you miss it at 10 a.m.? And he said, well, I realized that I had a deliverable for a client. He's an entrepreneur. He has his own business. I had a deliverable for a client who needed something. And so I had to use that time to get that done and bring that deliverable to him. I was like, okay, understandable. Did you know you were going to have that thing or not? And he was like, yeah, I just kind of mismanaged my calendar. And so oftentimes people don't have proper level of preparation on setting themselves up for success. And so the sole reason why they don't execute is because they just mismanage their calendar. And so I like to say that oftentimes people think it's a waste of time to decide how you're going to spend your future time, but it's actually, in my eyes, your best use of time. Because if you can spend the 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes, whatever it is at the beginning of the week, doing proper preparation, it's going to buy you back 2 times, 3 times, 5 times X, however much time you spent planning the time in the first place. And so preparation is huge. That was one of those like external things. And then some of the internal things, I think number 1, you have to have a strong why behind what it is that you tell yourself to do. 2, you have to have clarity as to how it's going to progress you towards where you want to go. Number 3, you have to have belief that if I do that thing, it's going to allow me to make progress. Number 3, it has to be something that I identify with. It has to be part of my self-identity. And number 5, I have to, on a regular basis, be able to manage my emotions so that I am in an emotional state so that I can execute at a high level. I'll touch on that first one again, having a strong why. Once again, bring it back to health and fitness. I like to tell people that your why isn't just what gets you started, but it's what keeps you going when what you started gets tough. Because oftentimes people get a jolt of motivation, like, okay, now's the time where I'm going to go to the gym. Now's the time when I'm going to start eating healthy. And they know why that is right in the moment, but then they forget that powerful why later on in the future because they never spent too much time to think about it or jot it down. And so anytime I'm working with somebody with their health and fitness goals, I have them write out 2, 3, or 4 sentences that is a powerful why so that it can sustain them during the tough times. And the way that I have them do that is three parts. Number 1, identify what it is that you're trying to avoid, or identify what you're trying to work away from. Number 2, who are you looking to become / what do you want to be able to do? And number 3, who are you doing this for? So again, briefly, what am I looking to avoid? I know a lot of people who I coach say, I see my parents or I see my family member have a lot of pain. and get sick all the time. And I don't want to be like that. And so that can be a very good thing to write down. Like, I'm trying to avoid that being the person that I turn into. And it's like, okay, who do I want to become, or what do I want to be able to do? Well, I want to be the person who actually is able to go to the pool and feel confident in their body, or I want to be the person who actually can go run a mile without stopping the entire time. So that's the North Star that I'm chasing towards. And then number 3, who are you doing this for? Because I think that obviously anybody who is looking to improve their health and fitness, you're doing it for yourself. You want to do it so you can look better, feel better, perform better. But there's a lot of people who are going to be positively impacted because of your new decision making. And you want to acknowledge that, because oftentimes we'll let ourselves down, but we're not going to let anybody else down. And so if we can keep those people that we're going to be able to positively impact top of mind, then we're that much more likely to win. At the end of the day, the last thing that we want to do is go to the gym, or the last thing that we want to do is cook dinner. Just remembering that person or those people might be the little bit of jolt of motivation we need to, like, fine, I'll go to the gym. Fine, I'm not going to put this pizza in the oven. Like, I'll go to the gym. I'll do what I need to do. So I think the most powerful why is identifying what it is that you're looking to avoid, identifying who it is that you want to become and what you want to be able to do. And then 3, who are you doing it for?
This is one of the most powerful ways I've ever heard anybody break down a why. Truly. I love the idea of really looking at, like, what am I looking to avoid, but also what am I looking to do? I think when people look at whys, from my experience, I've seen people be like, oh, I'm doing it for my kids, but there's none of that. If I don't do this, what happens? There's none of that personal connection. And I think that alone ties people way more into their goals than any of it. So I hope you guys are hearing this, writing this down, taking notes, because all of this is incredible. I'm curious for you, as this show is called Rock Your Comeback. I really, truly believe that, especially when I'm talking to successful people, like where you're at right now, that there's always a little comeback story where maybe you weren't doing all of this stuff. And I'm curious what yours is.
Yeah, I think that I would say my comeback story goes back to when I was in college. I studied finance and insurance, and that's what I graduated with. But then in between my my sophomore and junior year, I became a fitness trainer and started coaching fitness classes. And I always knew, kind of as I approached graduation in college, that I wanted to do something with fitness and health long-term, because I loved it. But I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. And I studied finance and insurance, so I should go get a job in that. And so I went and got a job in that. And I essentially quit that job after 2 weeks and was like, you know what? No, I'm going to go after this fitness thing and just kind of figure it out along the way. And so I had this kind of period of time after I quit that job. Immediately when I walked out of there, I was on cloud 9. I was so excited. I couldn't wait, but I didn't really have a solid plan. And so I quit that job in beginning of October of 2017. And it wasn't until kind of like middle of January that I had a little bit more of a steady schedule of what it is that I wanted, or what it is I was going to do to make money. And so there was kind of this 2.5 month period where I really went, I feel like, on a self-exploration process, if you will. I was listening to a bunch of podcasts, watching a bunch of YouTube videos, and reading a bunch of books. And because but most of my time wasn't structured. Most of my time was, you got to figure out how to best spend it. And you got to use this time wisely so that you can help it to chart your path forward. And it was like a great time, but it was a tough time because I had no idea what I was going to do. And so I would say that just using that 2.5 month period in the fashion that I did, of really seeking clarity, because I think that's what that 2.5 month period was for me, seeking clarity. And I think that's what all of us are always on a continual process of doing our entire lives, is seeking clarity. But I think I did a pretty good job of doing that, so that I had a good amount of confidence in the next step that I was taking forward. So I'll kind of leave it at that.
I love that you pointed out seeking clarity, because I think, especially when we're talking about goals, and I know you're talking kind of more specifically about fitness goals, that we want things to get better, but aren't exactly sure where to start or what that even looks like. For somebody in that position, what recommendations would you make on just helping them get clear on their goals and moving forward?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a few things. I think that one is almost directly what I did. And I always say this is, call it research. Go read books, go listen to other people, have conversations, ask people questions. I think one of the best ways to unveil what it is that you want to do is by seeing what other people have done, and for some reason have some sort of like emotional feeling about seeing that person do something. So I think one, doing a certain amount of research, and kind of within that research, making sure it's kind of like 1 and 1A is like making sure that you ask yourself questions. Don't just do the research. Don't just read the books and then just kind of put them away. Ask yourself, how does this apply to me? And what am I going to do with this moving forward? So I think that research is key. Number two, I think trying new things is one of the biggest that we can do. It's like going to a group fitness class was one of the things that really allowed me to recognize that, oh my gosh, like I love this. And so whatever that is for you, there's a lot of different things that you can experiment with, and you can try new things to see what is or what is not for you. And kind of, I would say the third thing is identify the things that you don't want to do. And you can kind of identify the things that you don't want to do through those first couple processes as well. But I think oftentimes we're so geared towards asking ourselves the question, what should I do? What do I want to do? What should I do? Where am I going? And I think it's almost just as useful to ask myself, what do I not want to do? And I think that can oftentimes help us move in the right direction, because one of the worst ways to approach what I just said is, okay, I'm going to do these. I'm going to try new things. I'm going to research. I'm going to ask questions so that I can gain clarity on my next step. And then somebody starts to do that, and they think they need massive clarity. They think they need HD vision on what these appropriate next steps are going to be. And they know exactly why I'm taking these next steps, because that's not how it's going to work most of the time. Most of the time, you're going to have some level of clarity. It's still going to look a little bit foggy, and then you got to go. And so I think, to me, that's some of the ways that at least I have personally gone about seeking clarity in my life. And I am continually, intentionally trying to do those things on a regular basis as well.
I love that you talk about that you don't have to have the whole picture before you start moving. And one of the things you said earlier in that list of 10 things was that, managing your emotions. I think we get stuck in this place where we're feeling stuck and we're feeling like I don't have the whole picture. And one of the most powerful things I have to remind myself as somebody who's just a very emotional person is that you have to kind of take the emotions out of it and look at what's the next step. Even if you don't have the whole staircase, what's the next step? So I love that you're kind of giving people permission to break that down a little bit easier, so it doesn't feel like I have to know 50 steps in advance. I can just know one thing, and that works for me.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the other thing with emotions, where I kind of help touch on with people, because I see oftentimes people not execute on their health and fitness stuff because their emotions are out of whack. And so trying to help them regulate those things by changing their focus is really big. And a lot of the things that I do. So I kind of have them focus or ask themselves a few different questions. Number one, am I focusing on what I have or what I don't have? Number two, am I focusing on what I can control or what I can't control? Number three, am I focusing on the past, the present, or the future? And then another question kind of ask yourself when a seemingly negative situation happens. And I do this all the time, is like, what does this now make possible? What does this now make possible? Because there are so many things that will then come up in your mind, and it opens your mind up to creativity and to exploration when you ask yourself the right questions. And so I think if we can, when we realize that we're experiencing a seemingly negative emotional state, to ask yourself proper questions, because I think it's simply a matter of what you're focusing on. And if we can change that and channel in the right direction, then it kind of goes all the way back to what we talked about at the beginning, is following through on the things that you need to do to improve whatever area of your life you're looking to improve.
I feel like I need you to make a list of like questions, or like a book of questions, so that we can all, when we're, flailing around, be like, Nick, what do you say about this? Because our mind is really easily directed. And when we are asking questions like, well, why does this always keep happening to me? We're going to get answers that aren't in our favor. But when we start to change it, it's like, what does this make possible for me? That's such a powerful, different take on what's occurring in your life. And it also gives you your power back. I mean, if we're talking about power, we're talking about like what questions and what answers are coming because of those questions. So I'm obsessed. I think that's awesome. Now, one of the things you talk about is like breaking your goals down to weekly and daily goals. For somebody who's feeling like so overwhelmed with starting something, how can they start to do that?
Yeah. So I'm going to once again talk about it through the lens of health and fitness. Now, I coach people as well with this framework in other areas of their life, but I think everybody can grasp this whether or not they have a health and fitness goal right now or not. I think it's a relatively easy way to grasp it, to explain it through that lens. So the first part of my 5-step framework, that if you're watching on video, it's behind me, is building out your why. And that's what we talked about earlier. The second step is setting your, what I call is your success indicator. And that's your goal. That is your starting line, your finish line, your deadline. So for a lot of people in health and fitness, that might be a weight loss goal. It might sound like I'm currently 200 pounds. I want to be 190 pounds by October 15th. So, okay, that's the overall goal, where I want to be by a particular date. Then it's like, okay, but let's realize that that's what's called a lag measure, meaning that you can't control it. And by the time we measure that thing, all of the things that are going to determine what comes up are done and in the past. Like when you step on a scale, you can't do crap about the number that's popping up.
Yep.
All the decisions that you've made in the past are going to determine what pops up. It's the same thing when a company is measuring their revenue. You can't do anything when you look at your revenue. All the things that are going to determine that number have happened in the past. And so it's like, okay, I can't control this. So what can I control? And so this is where we get to the weekly goals, where I call them progress indicators, because when you do them, it indicates to you that you're making progress towards your goal. So let's go back to the weight loss thing. If somebody wants to lose 10 pounds, then what are maybe 2 or 3 weekly goals that they can hit in order to predict the fact that they'll lose 10 pounds? One of them is probably going to be a fitness goal. It's like, okay, I'm going to work out 4 times a week for an hour. 2 of those are going to be strength training. 2 of those are going to be runs. Okay, great. That's my fitness goal. Then another one we might do is going to be some sort of nutritional goal. And for everybody, that might be a little bit different, but for sake of simplicity in this conversation, let's say that my dinners are just really out of whack. And so I'm going to look to really improve my dinners. So I'm going to make a home cooked, healthy dinner 5 out of the 7 days. That includes a high quality protein and a vegetable. Okay. So I'm looking for 5 out of 7 dinners. Then a third one, I usually break down into 1 of 4 categories for people. And that's water, alcohol, snacking, and sweets. Because for most people, it's one or multiple of those things that are really holding them back from looking and feeling and performing the way they want to look, feel, and perform. And so let's say somebody has a sweet tooth and they have maybe a dessert every single day and then some. So let's say right now they're maybe at like 10 desserts a week or so. Obviously every week it might be a little bit different, but an average of 10. Let's say now the goal is to have 5 or less. Let's see if we can have 5 or less sweets a week. So now we've broken down, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, but in order to do that, here are some things I can control. Showing up to the gym 4 times a week, making a home cooked healthy dinner with a protein and veggie 5 days a week, and then eating 5 or less sweets every single week. And those weekly goals are things that we're going to try to hit every single week for 10 weeks, because we believe if we do them, we're going to achieve the overall goal. And one thing that I want to just hit a caveat before I go into the kind of daily goals on that is those 3 metrics need to be what I call workable. Workable meaning it's an amount that you're willing and able to do based off of what you've been willing and able to do in the past. Because the best thing that's going to dictate our future actions is oftentimes our past actions. And so most of the time, people can't go from A to Z. There needs to be a little bit of a build-up process. And so, I may use the example of someone who eats around 10 sweets a week going down to 5. I don't want them to go all the way down to 0, because maybe they'll be successful with that for a few weeks, but more than likely they go back up to 10 plus after that. And so scaling it back in a realistic manner. Okay, so we've got the overall goal of losing 10 pounds. We've got the 3 weekly goals. Now, the next step is what I call planning your pills. So pills is an acronym. It stands for the purpose of them is to increase the likelihood that we're successful. Because like we've talked about all conversation long, it's really easy to say that you're going to work out 4 times a week. It's a little bit harder to actually do it. A little bit, It's easy to say that you're going to make 5 home-cooked healthy dinners, a little bit harder to actually do it. So these pills are, okay, given that these are my goals, and given this is what my calendar looks like this week, what do I need to do to make sure I'm successful? Let's see, in order to make 5 home-cooked dinners, it's like, okay, I need to list out on Sunday the 5 dinners that I'm going to make a grocery list off of it, and go grocery shopping. Maybe that is a pill to set yourself up for success. Maybe with sweets, let's say that you're going to a birthday party on Friday night. And maybe on that birthday party, you're fine with having one sweet, but you know that on Friday and Sunday, you're going to be tempted or on the other days, you're going to be tempted as well. So I'm going to make sure that when I go to this party, I tell a friend to hold me accountable that I'm not allowed to have more than one cookie at this party. And so there's a lot of things like that increase the likelihood that people are successful. And I'll go on one example because it's fresh off my mind. I have a client right now who's doing a trip with her husband from Thursday to Sunday. And some of the pills that she's set out for herself is on Thursday after work before the trip, I'm going to go get some healthy snacks for the car ride. Then she also said on Wednesday night, I'm going to make sure I lay out my clothes, my workout clothes before I go to bed to increase the likelihood that I go and work out on Thursday morning. And so it's these small things that just turn the favor towards us and increase the likelihood that we follow through on some of these difficult things. And so that's kind of a little bit of the breakdown on how I coach people with their goals. It's like, let's determine the overall goal. Let's break it down into 2 or 3 weekly goals. And then let's set small, more like daily goals that will allow us to follow through on those weekly goals.
I love that this combines like the list you talked about earlier. So we're, creating all of this accountability and we're creating the specifics, but we're also breaking it down. I think that's where a lot of people get lost, is feeling like they bit off more than they can chew. Like it's just too much of a agreement or a commitment. And also appreciate you talking about being realistic about, based on the past, what's a better goal rather than going, eliminating everything, finding a halfway point. Because I think, even when we talk about mindset, that's a really important thing, to not have to go from 0 to 100. You have to work with your own systems and work with your own body. Now, I know another thing that you talk about is the importance of having a scoreboard with your goals. So I'm curious, like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So that's actually the 5th and final step of this process that I kind of just broke down, is set up your scoreboard. And so everybody I work with either has a paper scoreboard, an Excel file scoreboard, or they create their own whiteboard for their scoreboard. And so it's really important to have what that overall metric is that you're working towards. And depending on what the goal is, you want to track that metric on a regular basis. So if somebody has a weight loss goal, I'll usually have them weigh 1 time a week. Now, people's relationships with the scale is a whole different issue that we could talk about, but usually I try to get people to weigh about 1 time a week. And so that's on their scoreboard. And then those 2 or 3 weekly goals are on their scoreboard as well. And so every single time they go and work out, they go check it off. Every single time they make that home cooked healthy dinner, they go and check it off, so on and so forth. And then same thing with those small daily goals. It's like when you go to the grocery, check it off. When you lay out your clothes the night before, check it off. Like even laying out your clothes the night before, check it off. Like that is a win. And the reason why that's so important is every single time that we follow through with the promise that we made to ourselves, it increases the belief in ourselves, the confidence in ourselves that we're moving in the right direction. One of the biggest things that holds people back from attaining any goal is just the patience to getting there. And this system kind of tricks you out of needing to be patient, because you have these small wins. You have things to check off. You have evidence, tangible evidence of progress and of moving forward. And so instead of just weighing yourself every single week, you have all of these other things that are really signaling to you that you're making these small wins. And then the last thing that I would say about a scoreboard is, this is the evidence that I have received from coaching so many people with a scoreboard. The amount of success that you're going to realize with your goal will be directly correlated to the frequency with which you engage your scoreboard. If somebody creates a scoreboard and then they look at it 1 time a week, then the likelihood that they're going to be super successful is a whole lot lower than somebody who engages with their scoreboard every single day. And one of the primary reasons for that is something that I mentioned earlier, is urgency. If you have something where you are looking at it on a regular basis, it's like screaming at you, Nick, you got to do this. Nick, you got to do this. Nick, you got to do this. And so many of us know that sometimes the pure reason we didn't do something is we just got distracted and we forgot. And so if we can trick our brain into telling us that this goal, laying out my clothes the night before, is urgent, I have got to do this thing, then that's going to increase the likelihood that we execute as well. Couple of small things on the scoreboard. If you try to create a scoreboard, it's got to be easy to update. You can't make it overly complex, or you're going to see updating it as a pain in the butt and you're not going to do it. And then the last thing, kind of what I just touched on, is you got to put it somewhere where you are engaging with it on a regular basis. If you put it somewhere where you only see it one time a week, then it almost is going to render itself useless. You want to make sure that you see it on a regular basis as well.
So I do something really similar. I do a bullet journal. So I list out kind of the things that make me my best self. So meditation, getting a good workout, and eating relatively clean. And so I'll X that out. And for me, it's like a mental game of not breaking that chain. And I also feel really good about like doing something for myself. Cause again, it's like, I get to put a little check mark in there. I get to add to it and say, oh, I did that today for myself, or, oh, I did that. And total full circle moment from the beginning of our conversation is, at the end of the day, it's the promises you keep to yourself that help you step into your power and help you stay consistent to your goals. This conversation has been awesome. And I know for the people listening who are trying to start the process of getting back in touch with their goals and with themselves, that this is going to be so, so helpful. Do you have any last advice for anybody starting that process?
Yeah, for sure. So, and it kind of goes back to, well, I thought about it when you were just talking about it, because this can often scare people, tracking stuff like this, because it can be great evidence when you're doing well, but it's also evidence of your failure. If you have a scoreboard and you don't hit these things, you are having something scream at you like, hey, you're falling short of who you should be. And so I coach people in the way I coach people to approach themselves this way. I also coach people this way myself, is when you go to hold yourself accountable and you see that you fall short, you've got to approach yourself with curiosity rather than criticism. So many of us get to the end of the day, see that our to-do list isn't finished, see that our goals aren't hit, and we beat ourselves up about it. And we think that we're the type of person who can't execute on our goals. When in reality, if we ask ourselves some questions, we can figure out why we didn't actually hit that goal in the first place. Oftentimes it's because we just weren't realistic with either the schedule that we had. Like I kind of used that example with the guy earlier. It's like, I didn't beat him up because he didn't get his workout in. I was like, dude, you just didn't plan well. And so that's something that we can actually improve on, because it's so important for people not to see themselves as somebody who can't hit their goals, because they're not that person. They just did something else wrong with regards to planning or preparation. But then people begin to tell themselves this narrative of, I can't hit my goals, so why set any goals? And then you don't set any goals, and you never live into the person you were supposed to become. And so again, when you fall short, approach yourself with curiosity rather than criticism. It's exactly the thing that I spelled out earlier with the client that I had. When he didn't hit it, I wasn't like, dude, what the hell? Like, get your butt in the gym, you lazy, I was like, okay, what happened here? And then we actually got to the root of the issue. And so he was living in the narrative of, I need somebody else to go work out with me, or else I can't hold myself accountable. And so we talked about how to kind of work away from that. And so it all came from the ability to be curious and the ability to explore what happened. And so for those of you guys who are nervous about going into the process, know that one of the best things that you can do for yourself in the relationship that you have with yourself is just go into it and be curious when you don't execute. Be curious when you don't follow through. That'll allow you to come up with solutions that will help you execute at a little bit of a higher level the next time.
I love not claiming that as your identity. I think that a lot of people do that. This is just who I am. This is what I do. So getting curious about that. And I think too, holding compassion, it's summer over here. We've had company nonstop. We've had the kids are home for the summer. And I know that's been really challenging for me. So I know that there's times where I'm like, man, there was a ton more things I wanted to get done today, but in this season, it's not realistic. How am I going to set myself up for tomorrow or next week in a time where I have a little bit more wiggle room, where there's less company? So having compassion too. I know you guys are going to want to work with Nick. And I know you've got some programs going on right now. Can you talk a little bit about those and how people can work with you?
Yeah, for sure. So I have the 10-week transformation, and I have a virtual program that starts every 10 weeks. And so the one that's coming up is August 7th. The one after that is October 16th. And for this, people go through the exact process that I kind of spelled out today. They figure out their goal, their weekly goals, so on and so forth. They have a scoreboard. And then I have video workouts that are recorded that people will complete every single week. And so you can find all that stuff on my website at nickcarrier.com. I also talk about it on the podcast at the Best You podcast. And then on social media, I'm on everywhere, but mostly on Instagram the most. So at carrier_best you there.
I will make sure to drop all of these links in the show notes so that you guys can have full access to him and all of his awesome things that he's offering. This conversation has been so good. And, especially like we talk a lot about emotions on this podcast, but I think action is just as important in figuring out how to get the most out of your action. So I think this absolutely nailed everything that people are needing right now. And especially because this will probably come out around the beginning of the school year and everybody getting back into the routine. So it will be perfect. Make sure you reach out to Nick, and you can catch me at NicholeEaton.com and NicholeEaton.xo. Thank you so much for today. It's been awesome.
Of course. It was a blast. Appreciate it.
Make sure to keep an eye out for my latest book, Rock Your Comeback, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power, out this summer. I'd love to connect with you. Make sure to follow me on Instagram or TikTok at NicholeEaton.xo. Thanks for listening to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on the world. Now go step back into your power. The world's been waiting for you. But first, if you could, leave me a review or share with a friend. Thank you.